Hello humans, Master Dinnerflex here, bringing you the low quality content you deserve. And now that we're pretty close to having these released, I thought it's a good time to go ahead and profile what I have for agents. Now, I guess I've been off and on testing this deck for about a year at this point. Structure deck got announced and then released in the OCG, and we waited until like almost a full next year till we got it, which is not very fun. I'm not a fan of us just skipping structure decks, because outside of Fallen Valbaz, all the structure decks we've been getting are pretty terrible. And even when they have like good stable reprints, we only get some of them. But regardless of that, the agents, I feel like people truly misunderstand this deck. They look at it and say, haha, loses to one hand trap, blah, 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 blah. None of it's actually as genuine as people sell it to be. This deck, it can play through hand traps. Can it play through 5 hand traps through Nibiru Gamma? No. But can it play through hand traps? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, as I go through the cards, there's like some interactions that there's like only one hand trap that can actually deal with it. If they don't have it, like any one hand trap is completely pointless. But like, this deck doesn't auto-lose if the normal summon gets disrupted. That's a lie. This deck plays bricks, but it's not really more than any other deck you're playing this format that combos. So that's kind of a null argument. Just a lot of things people criticize this deck on aren't real, or you can just find in other decks. My true, hard, honest opinion of this deck is it is identical to DDD in its placement in the format. It is pretty good, it's pretty resistant to hand traps, but it is a combo deck that doesn't have universal flexibility of just switching between Link 2s until one of them sticks. That's not what this deck is too focused on, so it can't go into Fibrax, into whatever, into Verte. That's not what it's trying to do. What it's trying to do is effectively just establish a fairy line. Whenever you get hand trapped in this deck, that's one less card you have to worry about. So that's one less card, that's like one less extra deck monster you need to commit to disrupt your opponent. So basically, the more you get hand trapped, even though the less you need to do, it's also the less you need to do. But basically, what you want to do is you want to end your turn by having some form of establishment involving synchros and links. This deck doesn't have... It has, like, specific lines it wants to go into, but it does not have one specific combo it does, and it doesn't lose to that one specific combo if it doesn't go through. That's not what this is about. It's just about putting yourself on board and establishing something that your opponent has to push very hard into, and then you could usually capitalize on it. So it's just that simple. You don't have to worry about any one specific combo doing it, which is why that video I showed off was like all these different types of builds, because this deck isn't about just doing this one thing, and if this one thing doesn't happen, you can't do anything. That's not what this is. It is a lot more flexible than that. It's a lot more resistant to that. People are too harsh on it. Even though I don't think there's going to be a tier 1 threat, I would put it in the exact same placement as DDD. So if you're confident in DDD, you're confident in this deck. But that being said, it's also difficult to play in big brain like DDD, because it's not just like, oh, do this, this, this. Any misplay can be very punishing, and you're always going to miss lines that would be superior. Like, it's just always going to happen. I've been testing this deck for a year, and I still do it from time to time. So very almost identical. The only key difference is DDD is slightly weaker to disruptions, but can play more hand traps, whereas Agents is slightly stronger to disruptions, but plays less hand traps. That's like the only difference. And like, you don't even need to play hand traps, because the only time you care about hand traps is stopping Scythe. But you can like have a side deck or cards in your main deck to do that anyways. But now that that's done, let's get into the deck profile and I talk your ears out. So, let's get into the agent lineup. We got 3 Earth, 3 Venus, 3 Neptune, 1 Dark Venus, and 1 Uranus. So, you've probably already looked at this, and you're asking, where is Diviner? Where is Diviner? I'm going to tell you right now, Diviner is like the worst starter in the deck. From playtesting and playtesting, yes, it is true that it's better to establish Flare Hyperion than actual Venus, but the reality is, it's better to draw the actual Venus than it is Diviner. And it's because of my prior statement about hand traps. You are going to get hand trapped. And if you're going to get hand trapped, Diviner is the most devastating place for it to happen. It is so easy to hand trap that. It loses just so many disruptions. And the reason it's worse to have Diviner than the actual agent is because of Neptune. Neptune allows any one agent to just come back out, and when you're drawing actual Venus, sure, it's not the Flare Hyperion, but if this Venus gets hand-trapped, you just link it away and then revive it with Neptune, and that hand-trap meant nothing because now you just use Venus again. So it's much better to draw the actual engine of this deck than something that gets into it. And plus, Diviner asks you to play 2 more Garnets in this deck, which we're already on Shine Balls and Sanctuary in the Sky, which are do-nothing cards. These cards don't serve a function in your hand and actually contribute negatively to it. So, well, Sanctuary in the Sky is kind of different, but, like, you already play enough. You don't need to add more just to make a 1-card combo line that is just resolving Venus. You don't need to do that. So if you're worried about picking up Diviners for this, literally don't worry. You'll be much happier without it. But yeah, 3 Earth. This card is actually just the better normal summon to Diviner because, of course, of Neptune. So even if they, like, Asher Imprint this, it has the value of being the tuner, which is nice. But if it does resolve, it gets Neptune, which is, like, insane. And Venus, you know what this does. Crazy. But now let's go into Neptune. So this card is just casually makes this deck super resistant to Nibiru. And no, that is not a joke. So you can discard it to revive any agent from your hand or graveyard except itself, and it cannot be tributed until the end of your opponent's turn. So they just casually let whatever you summon off it, being Nibiru proof, which is very nice. So you could end up like, you're trying to play around Nibiru. Okay, just make this, like, 5-Rex line to get into Apollosa, then revive Venus, and, like, they have to Nibiru you on a certain point, and it's just so easy to capitalize on that effect. So, like, Nibiru can be very null in a lot of combos with this deck, and that's very nice. But also, like, this is one of the benefits of not playing Diviners. You can max out on this card, because this card's insane. Like, this legitimately gives this deck so much hand trap resistance. Like, very nice. Oh, and then when it's banished from your graveyard, or just banished, period, you search your deck for Sanctuary in the Sky, which is this card, and that's very, very relevant. Then we got Dark Venus, definitely a one-of. Both of its effects are relevant. The main effect you want to try to use is its ability to revive Shine Balls and put them back in the deck. That's the one you want to go for. But its other effect to just special summon itself from the hand is also very relevant in an interactive game. Both effects are only once per turn, so if you use one, you can't use the other, but both effects are very relevant, and it being a good tuner is very nice. Then we got Uranus. This card is kind of bricky, but it's very good for hands that need a tuner, and you have access to Sanctuary in the Sky. It's very strong. I like it a lot. And then the 3 Shine Balls. Gem Knight Garnet, Gem Knight Aquamarine, and Gem Knight Tourmaline. Oh, my bad. Sapphire and Tourmaline. I'm forgetting my Steven Universe lore. Then we got 1 Master Hyperion and 1 Majesty Hyperion. So Majesty, undeniably, is just a one-up. You don't really want to ever draw this for any reason. Actually, it's fine to draw, but it's like, you need to already be playing on some level. You just want to dump this with Moon, because, truthfully, it's like the only Foolish Burial target for Moon that's actually good. But this card is kind of insane. It gives this deck a really, really, really long grind game. It can attack your opponent's graveyard, and it gives it cheesy OTKs with Sanctuary in the Sky, because any damage inflicted to your fairies is also inflicted to your opponent. But if you have Sanctuary, it says that damage you take becomes 0. So you take no damage, and your opponent takes all the damage. So you can do like that one Larewilisk OTK with this card, and I have done that on many occasions. And then Master Hyperion, very good going second card, surprisingly. Yeah, it's dated. It's literally an 11-year-old boss monster. But once you like bait out the main interactions of your opponent's deck, this card kind of just stomps on their board. It's very nice. And it being a level 8 for your level 10 synchros, very good. Like, Master Hyperion, definitely something you want to keep in the deck. Then we got Triple Orange Light. It's the only actual hand trap in the deck. Even though it's more of like a hand trap and then anti-hand trap, it's definitely a card I will be playing 3 of. And the most important reason why isn't because of its effect, but because it's a level 2 fairy tuner. Meaning any level 8 and it can go into Flare Hyperion or any of your synchros. So this is very relevant. Its ultimate reason for being in the deck list is that it's a tuner, but also it's just the best Herald hand trap. So, yeah. And then you're looking at this. You've probably been looking at this for a lot and saying, what the fuck am I doing? This is Guardian Niatos. You have no monsters in your graveyard. You can just special summon it from your hand. That's not once per turn. If you have 3, you just summon 3. That'd be very dumb, and it'd be a really, really awkward hand if that's the case. But, yeah. This is like the new wave of fairy bodies. So the rest of the monsters in this deck are just fairies that summon themselves. And that is very important because this deck is very similar to like any 2 warriors where you just plop a warrior, okay, full combo. It's very similar to that. It's not exactly like that, but it plays very similar to that. So just having a bunch of bodies that are just fairies that put themselves on board is very nice. And what's interesting is Guardian Niatos is one of these only bodies that, while you have Earth, the only one hand trap that actually interacts with this is specifically Gamma. Otherwise, your opponent can hit the Earth or whatever you're going to do next with a hand trap, and it absolutely will not matter at all. And here's why. So if you special Niatos and normal Earth, if they negate the Earth or Ogre, if they negate the Earth, that's fine because you level Synchro 10 into Flare Hyperion and start resolving Venus. If they Ogre the Earth, you search Neptune, revive the Earth, Master Flare Hyperion. If they decide, okay, we'll let this resolve, you search Neptune, and then you go into Flare Hyperion, and they negate it, it sends Venus from deck to the graveyard as cost, so the Neptune revives the Venus, full combo. If they Ogre it, same thing, revive the Venus, full combo. Basically, any one hand trap while you have Niatos and Earth is completely null outside of Gamma, just because Gamma negates the effect and takes the Earth off board. But, like, even then, that was a 2-card investment, and Gamma can still be short-sighted by a card like Ready Fusion and whatnot. So, that's why it's, like, unironically, like, the best fairy body in this deck. And also, I have cleared out my own graveyard with Majesty just to summon it for game, so that's kind of funny. And then we got Protecting Spirit, Legalith. It's definitely probably the weakest one of these, but it's also very good. Like, there are even weaker fairy bodies you can play, like the Time Lord stuff, but, like, those just summon themselves and have no other value, whereas, like, Niatos has extra value, Corbane has extra value, and this one has extra value, where, when a fairy on the field activates its effect, after resolving that effect, just special summon it from the hand, so even if they, like, Valor, Imperm, Ash, Earth, you can still just summon this and it's fine. And then while it's on the field, you can target a face-up attack position monster you control and a face-up card your opponent controls. You switch your monster to defense and banish their card. So going second, it can just take some stuff off board, which is really nice. So it's a pretty good fairy body. And the last one is 1 Corobane, but it's actually at 2 because of Light Stage. And that's it for the fairy bodies outside of Ready Fusions and Instant Fusion. They're basically the same card. No, very literally they're the same card. So you could max out on 4 of these, but I only play 1 target and I wasn't trying to clump these together. But basically, It accesses a level 2 fairy tuner. Very relevant. And then, I guess for the rest of the smells, we got 3 small world. It's good, but it is definitely a necessity. It is not something that is like, oh man, this is so strong. It's more like, yeah, this helped, this either saved my hand, or it let my hand play through a disruption I wasn't expecting. So, it's a necessity, but it's still very good. Then we got Sacred Water of the Sky, the Rhoda for any Sanctuary monster. It's kind of weird, like, the agents, there's an agent archetype, but then it also refers to, like, the Sanctuary in the Sky. I can't say archetype, because that's not what it is. But we've started getting a lot of cards that list monsters that list Sanctuary in the Sky, and that's what this searches. So it can't search Venus or Dark Venus, but pretty much all the other agents and Hyperions this can access. So that's pretty nice. Or it can just activate Sanctuary in the Sky from your deck, which I have never done ever. And then we got one Course from the Sky. Kind of gimmicky, but not really. This lets you play through a lot of cards, and because it's a Sanctuary listed card, you can go ahead and search this. But you pay 1,000, target a fairy monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. Then if Sanctuary is on the field or in your graveyard, you could add back a banished card that lists Sanctuary in the Sky in it. So it can... normally it's just a warrior returning alive, but if Sanctuary's anywhere, it's then a salvage. It being searchable is its main benefit. And then once Sanctuary in the Sky, all damage from fairies on both players' fields becomes 0, so Albert gets to benefit from this, I guess, but like that's not too important. And then one Light Stage, it's Light Stage. One called by this should be banned. 3 Forbidden Droplet, and the last card in the main deck is Lost Sanctuary. Now this gets sided out every time I go second, but it's a very good search target for Parshath, depending on which lines you go. And when it's activated, you have to have a target in deck, but you set a Sanctuary in the Sky or any card that lists it, any spell or trap that lists it from your deck, which is 5 other cards in this deck, so that's fine. And then you can banish the fairy from your graveyard. It's a trap, so it's a quick effect. To target an effect monster your opponent controls, get its effects until the end of the turn. Very nice. It's a very good card and very good search target, and it's disruption even if you get Dark Rulered. So, very nice. Side deck doesn't matter. The only card I would recommend is Light of Judgment, and it says while you control Sanctuary in the Sky, you discard 1 light monster and apply the following effects. Look at your opponent's hand and discard 1 card from it, or send 1 card your opponent controls to the graveyard. So this card basically is your own searchable Appointer of Red Lotus. And that's kind of insane for going first. And then the rest of the side deck, up to you, just make proper meta calls. And then for the extra. Now, this is pretty interesting. We got 2 Moon. When it's link summoned, you dump any card in your deck that lists Sanctuary in the Sky or Sanctuary in the Sky itself. But if Sanctuary is up or in your graveyard, you can instead add Earth from your deck or graveyard to your hand. That's very good. Its effect before you have Sanctuary pretty much is only ever going to send Moon. However, once you have Sanctuary anywhere, its searching Earth is very relevant. But its most important effect, and it's the only reason why this is the extra deck monster with 2 in here, is you contribute 1 fairy monster, including itself, target 1 card your opponent controls, destroy it. That's very good. So it's a going second link 2. That's very strong. But this has a real Draco Sack moment. If you get skill drained, it tributes itself to target that skill drain, outs it, and then you just continue playing. I have caught quite a few people with their pants down on that. It's why it's the only one that's a 2 of in here. Next, Mirage Light's very important to a lot of combos. It's definitely the most cuttable, but there's not a other good link to Disruption that doesn't require playing extra Garnets, and I'm not trying to do that. And then Fibrax, you've seen this before. Not only does it summon a tuner, but it also tags into Pluto. Very nice. IP Masquerena, very nice. Some of the combos, I've started making my IP turn 1 with this, just so that IP can't actually get hit with Ogre. So I've actually started doing that a lot, and it's very nice. And then Parshath, very important. If I was to add one more card in the next deck, it'd be a second one of this. This card is very, very, very relevant. You can discard a card, add Sanctuary in the Sky, or any card that lists it in its text, something very similar to the rest of the deck. But if Sanctuary in the Sky is already face up on the field, it has to be face up specifically. It's not like the other agents where it can just be anywhere. You can add any fairy monster in the game from your deck to your hand instead. So that can sometimes mean Cheeky Lancia game 2 and 3. And then when a fairy monster on your side of the field is sent to the graveyard, you can banish a fairy from your graveyard to special summon a fairy from your hand who has a higher level than the banished monster. All of the effects are relevant to this deck. All of them. So yeah, very, very good card and very important. Then we got Nightmare Unicorn for going second. Probably my least made card, honestly. Apollosa, very important to the inboard. Access codes out. Bullshit. It's the instant fusion target. I don't. This one. It's a level 2 Dark Fairy tuner. I will say that. So it's a fairy. It's a tuner. It's level 2. Has everything going for it in this deck. And then we got Herald of Arclight. This you can make on your inboard to make it super resistant to Droplet, which is nice. We have Cupid Pitch. Very nice. Even when I make Arclight, it's actually using Cupid Pitch, because when I do that, I get to search a Neptune for the following turn. So that's what's really cool about Cupid Pitch in this deck. You don't have to play some dumb Garnet to search with this. You actually just get to search another Neptune, so that's pretty cool. And I think it's even come up where I searched a Neptune that was actually live for that turn so I could use it. But yeah, very good effect. And then the Executor of, I think the Underworld is going to be its TCG name. Pluto, the honorary planet, the honorary agent. Yeah, it's quick effect Book of Moon while you have Sanctuary in the Sky in the field or grave. But when you don't have it, it's just spell speed 1 Book of Moon. But its graveyard effect is you can banish it from your grave to add Sanctuary in the Sky from your deck or graveyard to your hand. What's really neat about that specific wording is if Lost Sanctuary ends up in your graveyard, you can banish it to add it back to your hand, which is pretty cool. And then Flare Hyperion, most important synchro in this deck. Very good. Not only can it just copy like half this deck, but then it also just has the bonus disruption of just Cosmic Cycloning any card your opponent controls. Monsters, spells, or traps. Who cares? Very good effect. And finally, Baron Diffler. This card is definitely a necessity, because a lot of the hands where I'm like trying to play through, like building a line that specifically plays around a hand trap I'm expecting, this card comes up all the time. Making level 10 synchros is like a cakewalk in this deck. It's not an issue. So, very important card. And with that, that is the deck list. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I hope I gave a good understanding for you guys. This deck doesn't just auto-fold to one hand trap because it has to do one very specific thing. That's not what this deck's about. That whole point of that combo video was to show off how many different lines there are in this deck. This deck can play through one hand trap incredibly easy. The only hands that don't do it are hands that couldn't play to begin with, truthfully. And those hands are pretty uncommon. Like, this deck doesn't brick that much. This deck doesn't fold to one hand trap very much. And this deck doesn't have one combo that it needs to do, otherwise it auto-loses. That's not what's happening here. It is just very good stuff, very combo-oriented, very synchro-oriented. And once you understand that, you can kind of get a better idea of this deck and how to go about building this. Because my true opinion is that this deck is pretty decent. I totally think you could see this at a top spot in a YCS, or at multiple spots at a regional. I do think it's at that level. I know I say some nonsense all the time, but like, this deck is very solid. It gives a lot of tools, has a lot of tools against other decks. It like has tools against stun, it has tools against combo. It has so many things, and I think if people gave it a little more like testing and proper understanding of this deck, they'd be far more amazed of what it actually is. But with that being said, thank you all for watching, and yeah, remember, Master Dinnerflex will take your soul.